Hello fellow gamers, Jarek Defiler the Patient Gamer here to talk a bit about something that I think is exceptionally important in the world of gaming, player agency. In the context of gaming, usually referring to single-player games, player agency is the ability for the player to affect or change the game or the world in which they're playing via personal decisions or actions they make in said game. Needless to say, player agency is a very good thing, and I want to take a few minutes to discuss why I believe this is the case, and give some examples of how it has been properly implemented in the past. Hopefully some future game developers out there may watch this video and get an understanding of why player agency is awesome. So here we go. First off, player agency can come in many forms. It can be subtle, overt, expansive, minuscule, or completely game-changing. It may affect your characters, some NPCs, a city, a nation, empire, or even the entire game world. It just depends on the game. But what it does do equally across the board is give the player the oh-so-awesome feeling of immersion and substance. When a player witnesses their choices come to fruition, for better or worse, they get invested. Invested in the story, invested in characters, invested in the game's world, and most importantly, invested in the game overall. Why is this, one might ask in a chin-rubbing quandary? I'd say it's because the player is given the sweet, sweet thing that so many people love. Freedom. Freedom to kill Vivek in Morrowind. Freedom to decimate all of Driftwood in Divinity Original Sin 2. Freedom to nuke your little brother's city in Civilization 5 when he's not looking even though he's an ally. Granted, these aren't particularly decisions the game provides, but rather just something you can do. Still, I would chalk that up to player agency in its most lenient form. The standard definition of player agency goes back to the Dungeons and Dragons days of old, where the dungeon master would allow players to make decisions on how to proceed, be it through the main questline or some side plots. Depending on the world design, these decisions could be major or minuscule, but the important thing is that they are still decisions, aka player agency. But how does that translate to modern gaming, and quite frankly, why don't we see it that much in modern big AAA titles? I mean, it used to be there, looking back with big names like Deus Ex, Mass Effect, The Witcher, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Baldur's Gate, and more. We had plenty of great games that would give the player some pretty hefty decisions that would impact the story and gameplay drastically. As I mentioned before, in Morrowind you can literally kill any NPC in the entire game. Vivek, who is a god, can be whacked by you. There isn't any plot armor or invulnerable characters there. But then in Skyrim, Bethesda decided to make some story-relevant NPCs immortal, leaving that sense of player agency somewhat lacking. I mean, sure, you can choose what faction you want to join in the Civil War, but at the end of the day, the game world was still the same as you left it no matter which side you took. Now in Morrowind, if you slaughter certain NPCs, you basically break the chain of prophecy and can't proceed with some questlines. However, you can still continue playing the game. It even goes so far as to having guards of a certain faction attack you on sight, simply because you're wearing a specific type of armor from another faction. Your decisions have direct consequences, and that's just implicit interactions not even related to quests or anything, and it's great. But there's also a great deal of examples of explicit player agency that we can take a look at. For example, in the Mass Effect trilogy, depending on some of your choices, you can have a variety of NPCs killed off either by you or other events. These are NPCs that are integral to the game's narrative and, more importantly, your own squad, as many of them are actual squad members that you grow a relationship with, fight with, and become attached to. But depending on what decisions you make, they could get the George R.R. Martin treatment and be on the chopping block, and it makes the story and characters all the more powerful in your immersion. There's also the decisions you make that affect the game's world itself, such as choosing to eradicate or uphold the genophage, a biological weapon that is used to quell the numbers of an entire race by making their females mostly infertile. Given said race's history and culture in the game, there are a plethora of philosophical and moral conundrums that swirl around in your head when having to make this decision. And depending on what choices you made up to that point, you may lose a squad mate or two based on that decision. Whatever you decide, it will have pretty significant consequences not only in your own little team, but the Mass Effect world as a whole, at least from a storytelling standpoint. Despite the Mass Effect trilogy's lackluster ending that kinda threw out all player agency in the end, I still would say it's a great example up to that point of how giving the player the ability to make meaningful decisions creates a truly immersive and pleasurable gaming environment that just sucks you in, regardless of the last 30 minutes of the series. High value entertainment right there. Probably one of the best examples of player agency in my opinion is that of Divinity Original Sin 2. If you've seen my Let's Plays going around, you know that I consider Divinity Original Sin 2 to be one of, if not the best RPGs ever made. It's pretty much top notch for me, virtually flawless. Amazing gameplay, amazing writing, amazing voice acting and sound design, amazing art styles and graphics. Just fantastic stuff that has a plethora of high value replayability where, despite having over 700 hours played, I still find something new with each new playthrough. Truly phenomenal game. And one thing that sets Divinity Original Sin 2 apart from most modern big titles is its player agency. From the very onset of you designing your character, the game gives you choices. You can be a full-blown fire and ice mage, a sword and board geomancer that farts out oil and covers themselves in stone for defense, a fire-breathing necromancer summoner in heavy armor or just mage robes, a two-handed mace wielder that uses the power of wind and lightning to assist their strikes, a sneaky stabby thief that can also turn people into chickens while flying around the map, or all the above all at once if you wish. There's truly no limits on how you design or play your character outside of how many stats you can put in a given field, which is pretty liberal. For starters, you can choose one of 6 main characters that each have their own storyline that is integral to the overall world and story of the game. Or you can create your own custom hero that assists them in a party of 2 to 4, or simply go lone wolf and play solo. The player agency represented just in the character creation screen alone is leagues ahead of what most modern AAA games entail in their entire playthrough. And it just continues on with how you build your hero, or villain, throughout the game. For instance, deciding to build into lockpicking will allow you to get into virtually any locked chest or door in the game, opening up a plethora of avenues or infiltration into some areas you may otherwise have to fight your way into. Or if you decide to build into persuasion instead, you may just be able to smooth talk your way in, or get someone to assist you because they like your pretty smile. Building into intelligence will allow some unique dialogue options and powerful spells, but lacking efficient strength will prevent you from lifting certain heavy objects that could contain loot, or make your path easier. This is a very D&D type of example of player agency where your build will have ups and downs depending. This isn't anything particularly new, but it's just super well done here in Divinity Original Sin 2, and you don't really see that kind of significant decision making in most major modern titles. Then there's Divinity's story. This game has the best writing I've personally ever experienced in a video game ever. Not only is the dialogue and overall narrative great, but there is a vastness to it in that many plotlines are interwoven with others far down the road. So decisions you make in Act 1 will have consequences in the following acts, even up to the last act at the end of the game. These can be something trivial game-wise, such as characters you were smooshy with in Act 1 being discovered dead in the last act, with the journal telling how she was waiting for you. Or they can be something more drastic, such as not being able to enter into the Act 3 arena because you failed to compete in the Act 2 arena, or even going so far as to having some of the main storyline characters being killed off. Because like Morrowind, in Divinity Original Sin 2, you can kill nearly every NPC at any time, if you're strong enough. It's an awesome implementation of player agency. But you don't have to scour through CRPGs to find some decent player agency. The Deus Ex franchise has pretty good player agency in some of its titles. This mainly comes down to gameplay though, such as how one approaches an objective. For instance, you might have a high security building you have to break into in order to obtain some super highly classified data. The game will give you choices, not only based on your character build, but the map and level design of the building itself. You could take a blunt instrument approach where you just run in guns a-blazing, killing everything that moves, or you could do a lethal, stealthy approach and sneak around assassinating everyone with crossbows and sniper rifles. Or you could even do a non-lethal stealth approach and just knock everyone unconscious by choking them out or poking them with sleep darts. Depending on how you approach this, the game may shift in how it approaches you. NPCs may take note on how you handled a certain job. They might comment on how you're a loose cannon or a silent infiltrator. All depends on how you decide to handle each task. This will also affect any achievements you might want as well, because some are tied to stealth runs and whatnot. So giving the player the agency to proceed how they wish and having the game respond accordingly leaves a sweet taste in the mouth that makes you feel like you're taking part in something special. Deus Ex was pretty good at this, despite the narrative and storyline being somewhat on rails. There's a hefty amount of other examples I can discuss here, but I think that's enough. You get the idea. But how is player agency treated nowadays? To me, major studios aren't really capable of implementing it well, or perhaps I should say publishers. I think they have the talent, even the brains. However, what they lack is the artistic resolve or freedom and, quite frankly, integrity to risk something that may not be as digestible in the grander market. Instead, they design their games to be as accessible as possible for as wide a market as possible, leaving creativity and innovation at the door, and alternatively building a game on the foundation of market patterns, focus groups, provable selling concepts, and consumer demographics. All the kids love Fortnite, so let's put battle royales in all our games from now on. Brilliant! That kind of thing. Shame, really. It's a shame because these games I've discussed here were phenomenal successes. They didn't bankrupt the studios or publishers, they didn't cater to a niche market, and they weren't standoffish to new gamers. Quite the opposite, really, as many people got into games via Mass Effect and Elder Scrolls. Now, do they make as much money as Fortnite or GTA 5? No. But I think we can all agree that money isn't everything, and it shouldn't be even for major companies. Loyal fans and customers will bring in far more money in the long run than a major cash cow hero there. Gamers themselves hold a lot of blame here too, let's be honest, because we're the ones that keep buying these trashy games from trashy companies when we know they're trashy. Gamers never learn. Unfortunately, most publishers and studios stick with what sells rather than what's innovative and imaginative. Most AAA games are on rails, forcing you into cutscenes and specific playstyles in order to be easy to play for everyone, and I get it. They're businesses. They're there to make money, and that's perfectly fine. But when you put that above making a great product, you will fail in the long and in the short term. And what these major studios seem to forget is that if you build a very unique creative experience with lots of player agency and an emphasis on simply being good, the money will come. People will buy it. I know I will, and we will be more than happy to promote it for free. I promote the hell out of Divinity Original Sin 2. I have over 60 hours of Let's Play footage on my YouTube channel for that game alone, and I'll continue to pump out more every week. This is why I tend to mostly stick with and cover indie titles, because they understand what makes good games good. Player agency being a major aspect of that. Here's looking at you, Risk of Rain 2. So if there's any future game developers watching this, and I hope there are because we can never have too many good developers out there, please take these examples of player agency to heart and understand that giving your players choices and meaningful decisions is nothing but a net positive for your game. We like to be treated like adults, given opportunities to make our own choices and suffer the consequences accordingly, be they good or bad. Freedom. I don't think I have ever heard a gamer complain that the game makes them make too many decisions. However, I hear the opposite all the time. The game railroads you, your choices don't matter, I can't skip these damn cutscenes. We don't need our hands held, and we don't need to be told what to think or what is fun to play. That's our decision. So please, give your players some agency. This has been Jarek Defiler, the Patient Gamer. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you wish, or give a thumbs down if you don't. You all take it easy now. I'm out.